This is WFO Radio. Here's your host, Joe Costello.
Day 3 of PRI here in the Geico booth. Joe Costello with you on WFO Radio. And there's all kinds of things going on. We've had a lot of drivers coming by, but PRI is also about educating yourself about different parts, different things, different fuels. For instance, joining us now from PartsGrabber and Shell Racing Solutions, Jim Ferraro is with us. Jim, welcome to the show.
Hey, morning. How you guys doing?
Doing very well. How about yourself?
Great.
You guys representing Shell very well. I want everyone out there at Shell Corporate to know this team looks really well.
Well, I appreciate it.
Looking good. So let's get into it, because I know that Shell is involved in a lot of different racing series and a lot of different cars, but the bottom line is that they are involved with racing so that they can improve the fuel that we use in our cars.
Exactly.
That is the bottom line. I know there's a lot more profit margin and a lot more necessity in being the fuel that goes into the car every day, and I think Shell does a really good job. I hear that they have different things in their fuel. Of course, the marketing works. Now, where do you factor into this whole mechanism, Jim?
Well, like you had said, a lot of research goes into these fuels. They're very engineered fuels. And I'm working with a company called PartsGrabber, and we've actually been employed to build Shell's dealer network, actually installing dyno shop tuning dealer network. And what we've been doing is educating these shops on what these fuels do. A lot of these shops seem to have the stigma that you have to use a leaded fuel to get a high-octane fuel, where we're actually introducing an unleaded fuel called Shell URT Advanced that replaces all leaded fuels up through 116 octane.
Really?
Yes.
All right, like, for instance, I have a bracket drag race car.
Sure.
And we have to use 112 octane because we're 13.8 to 1 compression or something. And
Yep.
so just recently, it's kind of a mission nowadays. To find the racing fuel, there's usually one or two places in a regional area, and it's a little bit of a mission.
Sure, and sometimes there's too many choices. A lot of times you get inundated with, okay, do I run C12, C16, C10, what's the right fuel for me? Whereas we've got 3 choices that really covers the entire spectrum. And we've actually been doing what's called the Shell Racing Fuel Challenge. So we'll actually contact a dyno shop that's typically tuning with leaded racing fuel, and we'll do a baseline and show what type of power that car has been making on a leaded fuel. We'll retune it on Shell URT Advanced. As an example, we had a car that was running C16 that was making 980 at the tire. We retuned it on URT Advanced, and it's making 1,072 at the tire. That's unleaded, safe for O2 sensors, safe for cats. So, again, that's such a game changer. Every time we tell a dyno shop about this fuel, they just say, I got to have it, I got to sell it, send it to my shop, we're going to put it in everybody's car. So it's been incredible.
When you say retune, what are some of the things that have to be changed to accommodate the unleaded fuel? Because it does sound like it would be a big benefit.
It is. You can actually dump this directly into a car that's been tuned for example, C16, and it'll make about the same power, maybe a little bit more, but we're dealing with a fuel now that's got such a high detonation resistance. The name of the game is putting in a fuel that will allow you to run more boost and more timing, and that's what lets you make the power. So we found that particular car that was making 980, it was making 980 horse on 26 pounds of boost. And with the previous fuel, if you ran more boost than that, the car was pinging. It was detonating.
Which is, for those that don't know about engine stuff, that is the worst thing that can happen.
Oh, yeah. That'll
blows up engines.
Yep. So we were able to run 28 pounds of boost to run a little more timing, and that's what made the power. But to do that with an unleaded fuel is just it's incredible. It's a game changer, and a lot of people thought it was impossible, but here we are doing it.
Now, where does that technology come from? I know in Formula One they run unleaded fuel, and
sure,
they are spinning those things 18,000 RPMs. And is that an example of participating in a series has enabled you guys to design something? Was it directly from there, or is this more of a research deal that comes out of the laboratories?
Well, it's kind of both. It's a designer-engineered fuel. It is a purpose-built fuel from chemical streams. So unlike some fuels that are refined, and you'll see some variations from one tank to the next, it is the same every single batch, and it was purposely built to replace. There's some additives in there that replace lead that actually function better than lead, and furthermore, the wear performance is better than lead. So if you get somebody who's been running a leaded fuel, they can switch over to Shell URT Advanced, run more timing, run more boost, make more power. It's actually a slightly less expensive fuel. And so all those things together, coupled with the fact that it's safe for O2 sensors and cats, we're entering an age where we have a lot of people that have 9-second cars. They drive them on the street, they go to the track and run them up the track. Well, those cars have cats and O2 sensors, and a lot of them are kind of been strapped to leaded fuel because if they want to make that big number. They got to run leaded fuel, and then they are 3 months later buying new O2 sensors. So all of those problems are out the window. And again, being involved with PartsGrabber and being involved with tuning, I worked for Super Chips for 5 years, tuning cars. I've tuned with every race fuel under the sun. This is the best race fuel I've ever dealt with, and the fact that it's unleaded is just amazing.
And so how do you spend your day, Jim? Working with shops, you say, and I know that every dyno shop does have their customers and their clientele, but how do you deliver the fuel to them? This is not something that we'll see available at a fueling station, so is it purchased by the drum? Are you sending product down to them and they pump it into cars at the shop? How does that work?
Well, Shell Racing Solutions has been very good about getting involved with sanctioning events. So there's many tracks the fuel will be available during events. We also sign up direct dealers, and again, the fuel is priced out well enough that we can sign up direct shop retailers, send the fuel directly to them, and their cost of acquisition is actually the same or less than some of the other fuels they've been selling, the leaded fuels they've been selling. So they can make more profit on it. They can tune more cars with it. Pretty much any customer that comes in is going to be a potential customer for race fuel, because now they can, anything that's boosted or running nitrous, there's only so far you can go with 93. And in California, there's especially only so far you can go with 91. Well, we have a 100-octane product that's DOT approved and street legal in California, and that's huge.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is huge, because of obviously environmental concerns out there, and I understand they've been dealing with smog and whatnot for years and have their heavy restrictions out there. But yes, if you can do something like a 100-octane, that's going to be good. What about for the average car? Like, how does it work in reverse? You wouldn't put this fuel in a regular 93-octane, slightly hopped-up car, would you? Would it run?
No, there wouldn't be a whole lot of benefit. It would run, and believe it or not, the explanation that we were given, and again, I'm not the chemist, I'm not the engineer, but this fuel has a very unique way of burning. It's got a narrow burn rate, so what that means is a lot of people look at a fuel and they say, oh, that fuel burns slowly. That's the benefit of a high-octane fuel. Well, some of the additives are burning early, others are burning late. So that actually kind of goes into the whole burn rate. Well, this fuel has a narrow burning window, so you can run it in a very high-octane application and put a ton of timing into it. But if you run the fuel in a vehicle that was tuned for a lower-octane fuel, so for example, in the Shell booth, we've got a car that was tuned for 93 octane. It was a turbo Mustang, and it was making 536 at the tire on pump gas. Just as a test, kind of to mess around and see what would happen, we put the Shell URT Advanced in, which again is the highest octane unleaded fuel we offer. And we ended up making 546 at the tire with no tuning changes. Usually you got to tune it to make power.
Something.
And a lot of times when you put race fuel in a car that doesn't require race fuel, the throttle response gets flat. That doesn't happen here. So we kind of get the best of both worlds. You don't lose any throttle response, and you can put a ton of timing into it and replace top leaded fuels.
See, to me, one of the most important reasons why I am interested in motorsports and why we are here is because of the scientific connection between science and engineering. I think it's great that the envelope is being pushed in all these different areas, and fuel is one of them. This is a very interesting breakthrough. How long has this fuel been around?
Well, I learned about it first last year, and it was actually by walking up to the Shell booth. They told me about it, and quickly I just didn't believe them. I said, you can't make an octane that high without lead. So they sent the fuel out to test. And
you were a skeptic.
You got it. I was a huge skeptic.
And now you're wearing the shirt.
You got it, man. That's a success story right there.
Yes, it is, absolutely.
But I've got a number of shops that are now giving me testimonials. They said, we are done selling leaded fuel. Now think about that. Years and years and years of selling leaded fuel, using lead to make the power. They're all telling me, we're done. We're not selling leaded fuel anymore. We're going to sell Shell URT Advanced.
Wow, that is unbelievable. And I know there's a lot of people listening that have their own shops that are involved in some form in various racing. They're saying, all right, how do I get it? Where do I get it? What do I do? If there's no one around me that has it, I've never heard of it, what happens then? You
can contact PartsGrabber. What we're doing is we're basically helping Shell and their macro distributor in the U.S. called Hyperfuels. We're helping them sign up the direct shop retailer. So if you're at the PRI show today, you can come by booth 4154 and ask for me. My name is Jim, or you can ask for Chris or Terry. We'll get you signed up as a dealer. Otherwise, you could call PartsGrabber, or you could visit the Shell Racing Solutions website. You can just visit Google and search for Shell Racing Solutions. The website will give some of the phone numbers there. Or you can just call directly 321-251-6950, and we'll get you set up as a reseller.
Is this something that I could run in my, let's go back to my bracket car, because I think there's a lot of people like me.
Oh, yeah.
Been running leaded fuel forever. It's just got a Holley Dominator on there, nothing fancy, no O2 sensors, no catalytic converters. It's just a old school bracket race car. And right now I run, 112 or something, 110, 112,
sure,
right around there. Is this something that I could just put in the unleaded fuel and go?
Well, you want to tune it. Of course, we want to know what the stoic point is of the fuel that you're currently running. So, for example, if you're running a oxygenated unleaded race fuel or even a leaded fuel, we're going to have to make an adjustment to your air-fuel ratio to make sure the car runs correctly. Now, if you're running C16, C12, you could put this right in and it'll run, and it'll run great. But if you want it to optimally run, you obviously want to tune the car for the fuel that's in the car.
So, in my case, a jet adjustment.
Exactly. And it's funny, you ask a lot of people, there's a lot of misinformation out there. You say, what kind of fuel do you run? They say, I run 110 or I run 112. And then one day they're running Sunoco, the next day they're running VP, and they're wondering why their car's running all different.
Yes.
You want to tune the car for the fuel you intend to use, and that way you'll get the most out of your car. It'll be consistent, and as far as consistency goes, this is the most consistent race fuel I've ever dealt with. So you can tune your car right up to the edge, get all the power, and every batch of fuel is going to be the same.
Wow, that is very important for bracket racers out there who are talking consistency.
Absolutely.
And we run in that. You go to one track, you got VP. The other track is Sunoco. Maybe you buy it locally. Pep Boys has got a speed shop now, and you can get a VP there. And you're going to be mixing fuel a lot at some point, which you said is not good.
Yep, absolutely. And and a lot of times you'll see a car that's on the street that's running pump gas, and they'll say, let me just run a little pump gas with leaded fuel. You don't want to do that because then you're running with an unknown. So with this particular fuel, even though they're not meant to be mixed with pump gas, the intent is to run them on their own. They have a very similar stoic point with pump gas. So if you get a couple gallons of pump in the car and you get a couple gallons of race fuel and you tune the car, now you've got a little bit of a safety margin to deal with in terms of octane. So, but yeah, a lot of misinformation out there with fuel, and a lot of people just running, whatever fuel they can get their hands on, and it's causing them to just either not make all the power they can, or they're actually hurting their cars.
So let's, with the final moral of the day, sounds like start with your fuel, tune from there.
You got it.
Figure out what your fuel is going to be, and in this case, you guys are providing a great option. Start there and then work your tune-up from that.
You got it. Tune your car for the fuel you intend to run, and it will run the best it can.
There you go. Jim, thank you very much for coming on the show. I appreciate it. I learned a lot in a very short amount of time.
Oh, thanks for having me.
The whole reason we're here. And give that information again. Where can people find you guys online and read a little bit more about this?
Sure. If you'd like to learn about PartsGrabber, you can go to parts-grabber.com, and there'll be a phone number and an email address on there, info@parts-grabber.com. And just put on the subject line Shell Racing Fuels and let us know that you'd like to become a dealer. If you're looking for a retailer, you can also let us know. We'll hook you up with a local shop that sells the fuel. And the fuel is actually selling so much like hotcakes that if there's a particular area where there's not a shop selling the fuel, I just call them and tell them they got a customer that needs fuel, and they order fuel right there on the double. So, the main thing is these fuels are so incredible that the only thing is getting people to believe the fuels do what they do. So as soon as we send somebody a drum and they tune with it, they call me back and say, my God, what is in this fuel? We need more.
Wow. And what is it per gallon? Because I know that, I just spent like $12 a gallon on my C12. So.
Sure. Dealer cost per drum is about $472 per drum. That's for a 55-gallon drum. Again, that's dealer cost.
Sure.
So I'm not even sure if I should say that on the air, but
yes.
I guess I just did.
Yep.
So you're looking at $8-something a gallon, and with shipping and all, you're looking at maximum $10.50 a gallon.
See, that's not bad. And people understand that people have to make money, otherwise they're not going to get their fuel.
Sure, exactly.
I mean, it doesn't work otherwise.
You got
the whole network, everyone has got to do their little part and get there. You guys develop the fuel, and the retailer has to sell the fuel, and it's just the way of the world. So I don't think that that's a problem. But you said it's $10.50 a gallon, bottom, in the ballpark there. I just told you I spent $12 for leaded old school fuel.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's pretty good. It's almost cheaper.
In a lot of cases, it is a little bit less expensive. And again, we're not selling it on price because we believe, and we've actually been able to show that it's a superior fuel. It's a game changer. It covers more applications. The fact that it actually ends up being a little bit cheaper is just gravy.
It absolutely is. That is excellent stuff. I can't wait. I got another new thing. I've learned something new at PRI once again. Jim, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Guys, check it out because this is the development of motorsports. We're always talking about science and engineering and how that's really the core of motorsports. And Jim just gave us a perfect example why that is the case. Jim, thanks again.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Have a good show.
We'll be back after this right here on WFO Radio.
This is WFO.